Thank you, James. Good evening, everyone. I might as well stand over here. We're in Ezekiel. Well done for being here. I think we all get double blessings, because not only are we here on the evening of Bank Holiday May weekend, it's also with the weather that it is that you're also here. So I think you are allowed to feel pleased with yourself. What you said? Yeah, loads of seats near the front. Brilliant. We're in a series in Ezekiel, and we've got a whole chunk tonight, so let me dive in. So often in life, it's not the big things that'll sink you. It's not the big things that'll sink you. I became obsessed at about the age of 10 with the Titanic. Her last port of call was literally, across from where my grandmother lived and when my mother grew up. She was found in 1985 by a guy called Robert Ballard, and then he came back a few years later, and they went down in a submersible to have a look at her on the seabed. And one of the things about when they went down is everybody wanted to see the big hole that had been ripped in the side of the Titanic by the iceberg. And what they found was there was no big hole. There was no long gash. Rather, there was just a series of small holes all the way along the waterline. If you know the story, actually, the iceberg kind of glances off her, and she carries on moving forward because a ship takes a long time to stop a ship. And everything looks like it's all right. She's moving forward. The lights are on. The band is playing. But below the waterline, she was doomed. Not by one big hole, but by a series of small holes. And you and I are not that different. Often when someone's life falls apart, and maybe you've had this happen to you, it's not generally because of one big thing. It's probably a long history of small things hidden, things justified, things ignored, things repeating. And then comes that famous phrase, the straw that broke the camel's back. Ezekiel, we're in this series in Ezekiel, and today we've got chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11. Woohoo! And it was as I was reading these, I thought this speaks into those types of situations. Exile has come. Many of the elites have been taken off to Babylon. Ezekiel is there with them. And one of the questions that is kind of rolling around the head of the exiles, is what's happening back in Jerusalem? What's the city like? What is the temple like? The temple, of course, is where God dwells. And chapters 8, 9, and 10 especially contain an absolute shock. So it begins, I'm going to do a very quick précis, because when we get to the reading, we're not going to read all 4 chapters. But basically what happens is Ezekiel is in Babylon, and he gets taken by the Spirit, and he gets lifted up, and he gets brought to Jerusalem, and he comes to the temple. And in chapter 8, he sees something that absolutely shocks him, that hidden away from everybody else, in back rooms and in quiet places in the temple, the people who should be ministering in the temple to God are actually worshipping other idols. They're not really there. They look like they're putting on their Sunday services, they're dressing up in their vicar's robes, and they're doing all the stuff, but actually secretly in rooms elsewhere around the temple, they're worshipping other gods and they're worshipping other idols. And then the Lord tells Ezekiel in chapter 9 that there will be judgment on them for this, because they are defiling the house of the Lord, the place where the Lord dwells. And then it's a very famous chapter, but in chapter 10, Ezekiel watches as the glory of the Lord departs the temple. Then the glory of the Lord departed from over the threshold of the temple, stopping above the cherubim, and off it goes. And so he's been taken by the Lord to the temple, and he sees this hidden idolatry, this hidden worship, this turning away from God. He hears God's judgment on it, and then he sees God's glory depart from the temple. I'm not going to come straight onto 11 now, because we're going to get there and again. And I think there's a big lesson for tonight. So thinking about small holes beneath the waterline. In our lives, I wonder in your life how many kind of small little sins, small little things that you have going on for you. The things that you kind of keep hidden, the things that you keep secret. And what I think the lesson for tonight is, it's not that small sins become big sins, although sometimes that is true. but actually that the reality is behind those small hidden sins in our lives, those things that we keep hidden from other people, or those things we keep hidden because of shame, or we keep hidden because we don't want anybody else to see, are actually rival loves and idols. It's not just merely a kind of question of doing something wrong, but actually of love, of what we love and of what we worship. And the truth from tonight's passage is that when in the hidden places we find ourselves with our love and our worship turned away from God, is we begin to hold ourselves below the waterline. And above the waterline, everything might look like it's all okay. We turn up at church, we serve, we do the stuff. But below the waterline, we're leaking, and we're leaking quite badly. And there are 3 lessons I want us to look at from Ezekiel chapters 8 through 11. The first one is this, the truth about our hidden idols and our hidden sin. The second one is the consequence of them. And the third one, it's a good news one, is God's solution. So the first one is this, the truth about them. And the truth is this, that nothing is hidden. God sees what we think we have hidden away from everyone else. God brings Ezekiel to Jerusalem and he shows him the reality of what is going on in the temple. The shock is, and the shock of the book is supposed to be, that these people have been taken from the place where God dwells and the place where his glory is, and they've been dropped into Babylon, this awful place full of idol worship and wrong thinking. And yet idolatry is not just in Babylon, but it's in the temple, the place where God himself dwells. Idolatry is not just in the world, something that the exiles have to kind of like face up to in Babylon, but it's actually in the hearts of those people who are called to lead the Jewish nation. Idolatry is within God's people. And the mistake that they make, and the mistake that we can make, is that secrecy makes my sin safe. If no one knows, maybe even God doesn't see. It's one of the oldest lies. The little hidden sins won't harm me. Or this is a bit of a problem in my life, but I have this under control, really. Or if I look okay, then I probably am okay. And those are things that, lying behind it, are the things that kind of where our love is directed, and the things that we find ourselves worshipping. And we can be tipped off in the secret places by anything from impure thoughts, it's an obvious one, but to an email that comes in on a Friday from somebody demanding something from you in the work and stressing you out, and you spend the whole weekend thinking about nothing else. Why? Well, because of what's going on in your heart as a response to that email, and everything in between. And we think, well, I look all right, so I'm just going to keep it all a little bit hidden. But Ezekiel chapter 8 shows us that nothing is hidden from God, and that everything comes out into the light in the end. It's important, I think, at this point, because this is where you get into that kind of bad view of what God is like. You know, he's the kind of God who runs a surveillance operation. He's keeping a record, a bit like Father Christmas, of our wrongs and rights, and so that's why that's why he's taking, that's why he does this. But it's not actually that. God's less interested, I think, personally, in the wrong things I do, and more interested in the loves of my life. He's more interested in helping me with my fear. He's more interested in challenging me about where I put my trust. He's more interested in freeing me from shame than he is in just keeping a record of wrongs and rights. And the danger, and this I think is the big one, is we all think that the main problem is, what if my sin is found out? What if these things that go through my head are found out? When actually the real danger is the thing. It's not being found out, but it is the thing. A long, long time ago, Wendy and I went to South Africa on holidays, long before we had kids, and we kind of toured around, but we did these 4 days in this absolutely pucker game reserve. It's all we could afford. And you'd go out in the morning for a walk and see the animals when they're all sleeping, and then you spend the day sat by a pool, and then you go out again you go out at sunset, and then you go out again at night. And then there was one night when we went out, there was one night we came back, and we could hear the lion roaring, And the guy went, oh, the lion's near. We haven't seen the lion today. Let's go see the lion. So we all piled into this open-top Jeep, and we all drove off. And before we got in, the guy said, if we get anywhere near the lion, if the lion comes near us, a couple of things to realize about the lion is for the lion, the Jeep is neutral. The Jeeps have been around all the lion's life, and they come and they go. Nothing ever happens from the Jeep. No food ever comes from the Jeep. And so the lions just see the Jeep as they're not bothered by it. But the key thing is not to lean out of the Jeep, not to wave out of the Jeep, and not to give the lion any view that the Jeep might be anything other than just neutral. Get that? We all said yes. And there was a German family there with this 8-year-old girl. And so we get there, and we come around a corner, and they suddenly turn off the engine, and the guy says, if I was everybody now, I would sit really, really quietly. And these two male lions come around the corner. If you've ever seen a lion in real life, they're fairly big. And they come around the corner, and they start coming up, and they start walking down the side of the Jeep. I remember one of the first thing that happened was I was close to the front. It stopped. I'm sat here, and the lion stops there. So I went, because I'm really brave, I just went. And then I opened my eyes, and it was still there. But then it moved on. And Wendy was sat behind me, and she was sat, it was her, then it was the German mum, and then it was the German girl, 8 years old. And the German girl looked at her mum, and the parents had been ramming into the girls, whatever you do, don't wave at the line. And she looked at her mum, and then she turned so her mum couldn't see, and started going like this. And Wendy was like, oh my word, because Wendy could see. And the girl was like making herself as big as possible, and then like reaching out like this and waving away at the lion. Then eventually the lion moved. Now what was going on in that moment was the girl had been told by her mother, don't wave at the lion. And by the guy, the ranger, don't wave at the lion. And in that moment, she was more scared of being found out by the mother than she was of waving at the lion. Now, you look like a fairly intelligent, I was going to call you a crowd, fairly intelligent congregation tonight. Basically, the bigger danger to her life was the lion, yeah? But she was more scared of the mother finding out than of the lion biting her hand off. And I think we do that with the hidden stuff in our lives. I'm more scared of you all finding out about the stuff that's been going on in my head, or the things I've been struggling with all week, than I am of what it might be doing to me. Make sense? It's what we do with our hidden loves. It's what we do with what some like Tim Keller would call the idols of our lives, the things that we put up and the things that we say that we need. We think the danger is being found out, when the real danger is what it does to our hearts. Small hole, but it's below the waterline. And it punctures again and again and again, compromising our soul. And the Lord brings light and brings truth to us so that we can be set free. Not because, and so that those things don't destroy us, and not because he wants to punish us. I wonder if you were honest with yourself, what lies below the waterline in your life? What pulls you away from God? What compromises do you make emotionally, physically? What emotions rise up in you when things go well or when things go wrong? What have you done with past hurt and pain? What about your hopes and dreams? The exile did not cause these leaders in chapter 8 to turn to idols, but it shook them. And when we are shaken, the idols in our hearts take a bigger step forward. And the lesson from this part of Ezekiel is that hidden idolatry, hidden sin does not stay hidden forever. The lesson from the Titanic is that if you hold yourself below the waterline, it will affect the ship. So that was the first point is the reality of those hidden idols. The truth about them is that nothing is hidden. The second one is this, is the consequence. And the consequence is this, is that God does not stay where he is not wanted. God does not stay where he is not wanted. The hidden idolatry in the temple leads to the glory of God departing. It's a shock enough to see the idolatry in the temple for Ezekiel, but it's the greater shock of chapter 10 as the glory of the Lord departs that is the kind of thrust of these few chapters. It's the true horror, I think, of the passages, because actually what lies behind this is the priests will remain. The building still stands. The worship services on the notice board outside still continue, but the glory of God has departed. Imagine that. The priests are doing their thing. The services are happening. The building is still there, but the glory of God has departed. It's really important, I think, to understand that this isn't about, again, it's about this wrong view that we might have about God. He hasn't had a huff with them and is storming off. He's not petty or fragile. It's not like he's so fragile he can't handle them, having a bit of questions, a bit of problems with him. But he is holy. This is about his holiness. And so when the glory of God leaves the temple, it's not because Babylon has won or that exile has defeated God. But the glory leaves because the people of God have defiled the temple with rival gods. They wanted the benefits of God, but they didn't want him himself. And so he leaves. Now, it's really important for those of us who are Christians here tonight to know this. It does not mean in the New Testament, as we are, that God abandons us every time you sin or I struggle with the other loves of my life. In Jesus, we are secure and we are sealed with the Spirit. But the New Testament does tell us that we can grieve the Spirit within us. And when that happens to a Christian, we can still look good. We can still keep the outward forms of faith, but our hearts can grow cold. And we can lose an awareness of the closeness of his presence or of walking with him. It happens to denominations. It happens to churches. They can still hold meetings, have sermons, sing songs, do all their good works, and yet they lack the felt presence and power of God. For some of us, and I'm not saying I'm immune to this. We can kind of have areas of our lives where we're all in, and then areas of our lives where we're not in. So we serve and we pray and we worship, but there are still parts of my life where we say, God, not here. I still have my idols. I still have my loves. I can't yet give them up. I wonder if there are places in your life where, if you were honest with yourself, God isn't wanted. Places where maybe you struggle. For some of us, there are places. There's a couple of things. There are places where there are places actually where we are struggling, and we're kind of as it were fighting our idols, as it were, and we're aware of them. And actually, I just want to name in this moment that that's actually probably a sign that you are like that's a good sign. You're aware of that kind of tension in your life, and you're aware that you need help and you need forgiveness or you need healing. Just want to name that. That's a really, really good thing. I think it's the areas where I've stopped struggling, where I've kind of given up, that are probably the more dangerous ones. The areas where I don't notice anymore that I'm not living God's ways. As I said, there can be anything from how I respond to emails to what I do and how I use my money to how my imagination runs wild and all sorts of things, or to what I do with my pain and my hurt. But I wonder if it's more like the places where I've kind of like given up that are the places that are more dangerous, and the places where I am aware of the tension. This is key thing. It's not to condemn us, but it is to kind of be real. To say that actually there are places in our lives where below the waterline we're probably leaking. And the Lord wants us to see that and to know that because he loves us. Where are the places in your life where you think, actually, God, I'd rather you didn't come here? So nothing stays hidden. The hidden idols, the hidden loves, the hidden sins of our life will all come to the surface. God doesn't hang around where he's not wanted, and we can grieve the Holy Spirit. Now, if my talk ended there, that is quite a depressing talk, I think. Do you? A few people do. Okay. God sees what you hide, the glory departs, and he's the God of judge. Shall we stand? But luckily, the whole sweep of our passages do not end there. And chapter 11 has a wonderful promise of God to his people. And Judith is going to come and read it to us. And then after that, I'm going to talk about what God's solution is. So, Judith, thank you.
You don't know how relieved I am that it wasn't all 4 chapters. So we're starting chapter 11, verse 14 through 21. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, the people of Jerusalem have said of your fellow exiles and all the other Israelites, they are far away from the Lord. This land was given to us as our possession. Therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Although I sent them far away among the nations and scattered them among the countries, yet for a little while I have been a sanctuary for them in the countries where they have gone. Therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will gather you from the nations and bring you back from the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you back the land of Israel again. They will return to it and remove all its vile images and detestable idols. I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Then they will follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. They will be my people, and I will be their God. But as for those whose hearts are devoted to their vile images and detestable idols, I will bring down on their heads what they have done, declares the sovereign Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Brilliant, Judith. Thank you very much. God's not just in the business of exposing what's going on in my heart. He also wants to offer the solution that I need. I got so into the Titanic that I bought my own copy of the British Board of Inquiry's official report into the sinking of the Titanic. There were 2 Board of Inquiries held, one in New York, one in London. And as a result of the Boards of Inquiries, you probably know this, but there were many changes that were followed. So lifeboats, get this, prior to the Titanic, the amount of lifeboats was based on the tonnage of the ship, not the amount of people on the ship. Sounds mad, but they made that, they said, well, hey, why don't we have enough lifeboats for people? Better procedures around the launching of lifeboats, better construction, so the Titanic's next sister ship, the Britannic, although she also did sink, but that's another story, was much better constructed, and there were more rules. So, for example, prior to the Titanic, you didn't have to have 2 wireless operators, you only had to have 1. But actually, after Titanic, you had to have 2, so there was 24-hour cover. This is what the world's solution was. Actually, something's gone wrong. What can we do to fix it? When hidden sin is exposed in us, and you'll see this in culture all the time, this is our response as well. What can we do differently? We need better boundaries, we need better controls, we need to manage it better. Time and again, and this is what you'll see it in culture and you'll see it in our hearts, when hidden sin is exposed or when things go wrong, our first response is, what lessons can we learn and what can we do differently? But Ezekiel is telling us that the problem is not our lack of rules or our bad habits. It's our hearts and what we love. Rules can restrain us, but they can never renew us. And this is what God longs to do. And this is the amazing promise of Ezekiel 11. God says, I see your sin. I see your idolatry, but I'm not going to give you more rules. I'm going to give you new hearts. And I think, if anything, do please coming as we work our way through Ezekiel. But this is the message of the whole book. We cannot rescue ourselves. We need cleansing. We need new hearts. We need new spirits. We need the presence of God. And that's what he longs to do. And all of this we know happens in Jesus. The glory leaves the temple, but John says we have seen his glory. In whom? In Jesus Christ. The glory that left the temple comes back in the person of Jesus. We learn that Jesus is the true temple, the place where humanity and God truly meet. And at the cross, Jesus bears the judgment that your and my idolatry and wrong hearts deserves. Jesus is cast out so that we can be brought in. And Jesus goes to the depths so that you and I need not sink in our sin. Today is Pentecost, and at resurrection and Pentecost, we learn that sin has been defeated, death has no hold over us, we have a new life, and the Spirit of God has been poured out to give us the new heart that Ezekiel was talking about. God comes to live in us and to give us new hearts. So in that reading, when he talked about them getting rid of the idols and getting rid of the detestable places, it was not because he told them to do it, but it was because they had a new heart. They were responding to what had happened to them. What it means for me and you is actually that when my hidden sin, when my hidden loves do come to the light, are uncovered, or I become aware of them, I have hope. What it means for me is I do not need to hide away from you or hide from you the things that I know are not good about me. It also means that I need not live under shame for those things. And crucially, it doesn't, and this is, I think, what we do again and again and again, is we hide until it's too late. And we think everybody else can see that we're listing and going down at the head to keep the illustration going. And we're like, I think it's okay, I don't think anybody else notices, and everybody else does. And then when it gets too late, we go, I think I might be sinking. Everybody goes, oh, really? And we don't have to wait till it's too late. What it means is, because of Jesus, is I can bring my stuff into the light. I can bring it to this table. I can bring it to the cross. I can ask for his Spirit to fill me and to continue to change me. And I can let God change. I can say my prayer can be, not God change what I do, not God change what I think about, not God give me strength to put in new rules, but God, could you change what I love, what I obsess over, what I think about? New boundaries may follow, new habits may happen, new accountability may be put in place, but not to fix the problem, but to follow the grace of God that comes first. It's not the big things that will sink me, but the hidden small things adding up, the holes beneath my waterline. And when failure comes in our world, the solutions are new rules, new plans, new safeguards. But here in these chapters in Ezekiel, we are reminded that the problem lies within, in my heart. And this is why I think God's solution is better than ours. He doesn't want to give me new rules. He wants to give me himself, Jesus, the one who bore the punishment for all my sin, including the little hidden ones, the one who rose again to new life and pours out his Spirit and gives me a new heart so that I might love differently, worship differently, and be patched and whole beneath the waterline. Amen.